40C311. This is going to be, well, we're not really sure what this is. We think we're going to have an overlay here where they use some fabric, as they're going to do on the remainder of the project. This is upstream or west of GPS 404088. We're on US Highway 60 in Kay County, Oklahoma, near Tonkawa. That's central part of the state, just east of US 177 and a little bit further east of Interstate 35. Show the panorama of the area. This is a little sign going into Tonkawa says that it is the wheat heart of Oklahoma, and you see what they're talking about. We got wheat fields everywhere around here. We're working in the eastbound lanes. What you see up ahead over there, the bridge and the interchange, that is US 177. A couple miles beyond that to the west would be Interstate Highway 35. Again, this is upstream or west of the site, which again is in the eastbound lanes here of US Highway 60. A little windbreak here along the fence line. I'm going to start from the back and work my way back up the test section on this one, as I did before, so I can see the traffic as it approaches and so on. The entire test section at this time here because, anyway, we're going to have a borehole up there beyond the end of this one just to verify the thickness of steel. Well, we'll go ahead and pick up what we can. I'm going to work back up in the other direction, not for any sight reasons, but just so I'm working in facing traffic. A little bit safer situation. Thank you. Which is right here to my right. What's interesting about this pavement is, as in the GPS section, the distress tends to be mostly associated with the thermal cracking that we have. There doesn't appear to be that much rutting, except in places where we have a longitudinal crack in the inside wheel path, and I think that is associated with the temperature changes that we get out here in this part of the state. Plus 40, we have what is the most dominant type of distress and the worst type of distress we have on this project. And what it is we have a high severity transverse crack which has which has been patched to some degree. Now, what this patch is here for is for the depression which usually forms on the leaf end of the crack. It's very similar, in my mind, I think, to the mechanism that you see when a concrete pavement faults. What happens is what we have here is about 2 inches of a HMAC surfacing or wearing force and 8-inch sand asphalt base. And as water penetrates into the crack, problems with sand asphalt eroding and with the fine-grained soil underneath eroding as well. Where we have our greatest rutting and where we have some associated fatigue cracking is where I believe a thermal crack is open in the longitudinal direction in the inside wheel path, which is about in the center of the pavement. And you've had the same mechanism working except with more loads traveling directly over it. You get the depressions and then the fatigue in the asphalt concrete. But something interesting is that except where you have a case like that, where you have a wide transverse crack, there's very little distress in between those localized places. Up here to a somewhat younger transverse crack, which you can just now start seeing some of the depressions taking place here. I'm going to go ahead and drop the carpenter rule so I can show exactly what I'm referring to here. Going across a crack and you can see how it is faulted. It's faulted by about a ½ inch right at that location. And it's pretty well that way across the lane. This crack hasn't spalled too much. This is a medium severity. There's some much higher severity on this as well on the other test sections. plus 15, just a very small area of bleeding. It may not actually be that, but we do have asphalt concrete ponded at the surface, and it could affect the skid resistance at this isolated point. Moving on up, going back up the test section, see another transverse crack up here around station 2 plus 60. As before, this one is, you can see some cracking associated with the depression starting to begin on the lead side. And this is what often happens is once this starts occurring and it just punches out almost, and that's why they've been having to patch, as well as to try to improve the rideability of this. See, the crack is more widely opened over there in the inner lane than it is here in the outside lane. It extends all the way across the pavement, including the shoulders. Our markings here as yesterday are being done in the shoulders except for the transition, the end transition points, which we're marking out into the lane. Out, even though we hadn't gotten approval, or I don't know if approval is the correct term, but we hadn't agreed to have a supplemental site here, but we felt we may as well mark one out where we could if that were to be the case. And I think what will happen here, as I said before, is we'll wind up having a fabric being placed on this and then a relatively thin overlay, which is what they would be doing typically on this project anyway. Overlay section for Sharp, which is just downstream of us here, will not get the fabric, and the thickness will be controlled to 1.25 inches plus or minus 1/4 inch. Here's another crack, and you may be able to see, I'll get down here where the correction is here on the lead end of the crack. Stations 1 and 2, we have some of the longitudinal, I believe I classified this as longitudinal. We do have some alligator cracking, but this is more generally a single crack without much associated cracking around it. It's a medium severity. The crack width is greater than 1/4 inch, but it's not badly small, so I'll call it a moderate severity crack. We come to another transverse crack here, which I'm referring to as moderate severity. It's wider than 1/4 inch, but without any depression or severe spalling associated with it. Moving up towards station 1, you get into some places where it's as described, where the crack, the longitudinal crack, has developed into a higher severity level. You can see the spalling and the fragments of it, at the edge of the cracks here, and then on up there where apparently there's been some depressions, which will show up as rutting associated with that, where some patching has been placed. It looks like we may have ruts up to 3/4 inch there on the inside. It might even be up to 1 inch. It appears to be the similar or same mechanism, though, as we see elsewhere here, where we have these depression cracks. Here is a high severity transverse crack. Where it's the moisture that's infiltrating the pavement causing the rutting, and the rutting actually being due to the erosion of either the sand asphalt or the material in the paved path. And we're back at the beginning of 40C311.